America is truly a leader in sustainable fisheries management, but the MSA hasn't been reauthorized in over a decade, and while it's an important bill that has stood the test of time, it needs some updates, particularly concerning the impacts of climate change. When I first started drafting the bill that we've titled Sustaining America's Fisheries for the Future Act, again in partnership with Congressman Case, I knew that we needed to change the narrative around marine fisheries. We wanted the conversation to not be about partisan politics, but to be an inclusive, transparent, and stakeholder-driven process so that we could get back to basics and focus on the needs of fishing communities. I'm a big believer that good process makes good policy. And so we started with a process of hearing directly from stakeholders all over the country. And we were able to do that in person in many of our listening sessions, and then the pandemic intervened, but we pushed through and finished the rest of those sessions virtually. After that, we released a discussion draft of our bill and actively sought comments on it from stakeholders all over the country. You know, I think people are not only tired of the partisan divides they see with so many issues getting hijacked by partisan agendas, they're also tired of backroom deals. And so we really tried with this bill to open it up and make this one of the most transparent processes anyone has ever seen for developing a major piece of legislation. From the listening sessions to taking comments, we have genuinely heard from stakeholders all over the board, commercial, recreational, charter, tribal, subsistence fishers, environmentalists, scientists, council members, and other regulators, processors, the offshore wind industry, and more. We learned through this process that, again, while MSA is a great law that is largely working, doesn't need to be reinvented, but it does need to be updated. And at the top of the list of updates is climate change. Fish stocks are shifting. Ecosystems are changing. How we manage fish needs to change as well. And that means incorporating more climate science, improving coordination, and more strategic planning. All of that is included in this bill. We also need to update some provisions relating to the 8 regional fishery management councils. This bill includes language that strengthens the public process and transparency, including updates for council ethics requirements, more transparent voting, and strengthening anti-lobbying provisions. We also included 2 seats to the North Pacific Council for Alaska Natives, who historically have been far too unrepresented. We created voting liaison seats for the New England and Mid-Atlantic Councils, where stocks are overlapping and shifting due to climate change. This will help both regions plan for and adapt to climate change, and it'll help reduce conflict between the regions. This legislation also is very heavy on science and data. This is one of the points of consensus that we heard all over the country from just about every stakeholder. We need more data, better data, to keep up with today's fishery management challenges. We need the best available science. And so we've included language to expand and improve electronic technologies, cooperative research and management updates, and recreational fishing data consistency improvements. In Title V, we address many critical conservation issues that'll make MSA even more effective as the world's best example of sustainable fisheries management. My bill strengthens language intended to reduce bycatch, strengthens protections for essential fish habitat, and amends requirements for fishery rebuilding plan outcomes so that we don't end up on endless rebuilding plan loops. We need to ensure that rebuilding plans are working so that we can have productive and sustainable fisheries. We also include Congresswoman Debbie Dingell's bill on forage fish conservation in our MSA Reauthorization bill. This will help us manage a set of foundational species as a food source for other fish and animals in our marine ecosystem. And finally, we incorporated several other bipartisan bills in the legislation. Some go beyond the MSA, but they're critical for fishing communities and fisheries management. Representative Pingree's Working Waterfronts Act, Representative Webster's and my Fishery Disaster Improvement Act, for example. I want to thank the Dean of the House, Congressman Don Young, for his decades of leadership on marine fisheries management and for the productive conversations that we've had so far on this subject. Of course, he played an instrumental role in the original writing of the MSA. It really should bear his name on it. And while our 2 bills at this point have some differences, there's also much that we agree on. So I am going to continue reaching out to my friend, Congressman Young, and to his team in hopes that we can come together on a bipartisan bill as the process moves forward.